I'm Eula Clark, Mayor of the City of Stewart, calling together the regular meeting of the Stewart City Commission, October 25th, 5:30 p.m. at the City Commission Chambers, 121 Southwest Flagler Avenue, Stewart, Florida. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor,
Yes?
Vice Mayor Matheson,
Here.
Commissioner Bruner,
Here.
Commissioner McDonald,
Here.
and Commissioner Meyer.
Here.
Let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by our Vice Mayor, Merritt Matheson. As we say the pledge, let us consider the oncoming holiday season and parents and children in our community and their safety.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our agenda goes to comments by city commissioners. Commissioner Bruner.
Well, as Commissioner Meyer had said, we were at a conference in Cocoa Beach, and a lot of it was things that we were already doing and wanting to accomplish. And I noticed up there, driving around, is the blight and just giant parking lots, empty and nothing going on. And that conference was to help cities that even if you're where you drive up in your car and have a little indent, even that water that sits there can be taken underneath by different new technology. And there was a lot of new technology. Some of it's probably more than what we want to spend, but it's worth every penny, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner McDonald.
Okay, so a couple things. One is I want to start off with just a little shout out here for Jim Kralski. He's was out there at between midnight and 3 a.m. putting trees up. I'm sure there was a lot of help from other folks. I'm not sure how I was there, but Jim's the one that was sending me early morning text messages. So thanks for all the, what's that? No, not at 2, but they were pretty early. I think like 9 a.m. or something. So anyways, thanks, Jim, for keeping an eye on those trees and make sure that that project moves forward. One of the things I want to bring up today is two things, and they're both transportation related. First, I'm going to start with the MPO. This morning, me and Commissioner Matheson, who are members of the MPO, approved the MPO approved their annual work plan. And there's just a couple things on here I just wanted to point out. There's a lot of projects within the city, but a couple I just wanted to point out in general. Let's see, let me find it here. Bike lane sidewalk on Monterey Road, Palm Beach Road, Dixie Highway. That's funded for 2025 for $1.136 million, $1,136,000. Intersection improvement at Baker Road in US 1, which has been a dangerous intersection. There's $739,000 approved on that project within the city. Let's find a couple of the Sailfish Capital Trail. And this is the studying the location of the Sailfish Sailfish Capital, Martin Trail segment of the East Coast Greenway. We've got $645,000 for that, which is a great project to see that really starting to move forward. One of the ones I'm most pleased with over the next 5 years, there's $4.7 million in the work plan for Willoughby Road extension. So that one is moving forward. We got that into the MPO in about 2017, I believe. And it's starting to, and the state is looking in that and moving that forward. The bike lane on East Ocean from Palm Beach Road to Southeast Hospital Avenue, which there's no bike lane there. That is a definite needed improvement. And we've got that funded for construction for 2023. So that's one of the best ones. And then TAP grants for sidewalks at multiple locations in the city. He funded for 2024, and there's almost 600,000 for that. So we've got a lot of great transportation projects that we've been working on through the MPO. Commissioner Matheson has been doing a great job on that, along with all the members, as far as making sure that we're getting everything funded appropriately. And I look forward to seeing these projects moving forward and improving safety. The last thing I wanted to bring up is Palm City Road. And I feel like whenever we talk about Palm City Road, I feel like we're beating a dead horse.
The horse won't die.
Yeah, it just won't go away. So, Palm City Road, the traffic has picked up dramatically in the last couple of years with the development in Palm City primarily and in Jensen Beach, as far as that goes. And people using it as a cut-through road. I used to never see that much traffic heading north. It was almost always heading south. But the northbound traffic has picked up dramatically. It's a challenge of a road because it's a county road that's partially in the city, partially in the county, and incorporated Martin County. In 2019, the road was a D road with an average trips of 7,800 trips a day, with peak directional trips of 419 an hour, which is quite a bit for a road, a 25-mile-an-hour road. But it's the number I think is most concerning. It's growing at 3.8% a year is the anticipated growth. I think it's actually higher than that. And I had spoken with Mr. Dias about getting some trip counters put on it. They're being on the road so we can look at the trips, and also about where we put the trip counters. I'd like to see them closer to Monterey Road because I want to see how many people are transitioning. There's a lot of people making the illegal U-turn, and now I also see people coming down Canner, taking a left onto Monterey, and then a right on the Palm City Road to go around traffic at US 1. So once the trip counters get freed up from a couple other streets, they got a couple other places they need to go first. I'm looking forward to seeing if we can get some trips counts on there. And then we need to really engage the county and come up with some traffic control devices for Palm City Road. We've discussed everything from changing the intersection at US 1 to roundabouts to landscape, some sort of dividers, different types of traffic control dividers to slow people down. We really need to do something. I can't believe I'm saying this because it's something I never have wanted, but I think possibly a stop sign at Manor to slow some folks down, make that a four-way stop, but also to give traffic a chance. I know I've spoken with several residents that are having trouble getting out of their streets at certain times of the day. And I was coming downtown one day, going to the downtown Publix at about 5:30, and it was backed up almost all the way to Manor from US 1. So I've never seen traffic stacked that far.
That's going northbound.
Yeah, in the northbound. The northbound lane is where I think the growth has changed. So I'm looking forward to getting those traffic counts, and then maybe we can, but we do need to engage the county, which has been a challenge every time we've tried to do that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask
Commissioner
a question?
Meyer.
Thanks. So you mentioned sidewalk projects throughout the city. In the
Yes.
next, is the on A1A between Florida Street and 14th Street
think-
on there?
Let me see. Let me look and see what it says on the sidewalk.
That's been,
I think that's
I've
one
wanted
of them.
that for so long.
Yes.
Let's see.
I hate
construction-
seeing young moms pushing strollers through the grass every day.
It should, from Monterey up to the railroad track?
Yeah, and across. It's super unsafe.
I think it was on the MPO list before.
I believe it is. I don't have
Okay.
the list in front
If
of me.
it's
I
not,
don't have the
can-
list. It just says we have various locations. And I can't remember if that was
Yeah,
on
when
that
Sam
list or
Emerson was
not.
here, I thought we had it.
Yeah, it'd be great to have that advocated for if you could on behalf of the city
Yeah,
because that's used. People
I think if it's in the TAP, we've been very successful. Pretty much all the TAP grants we've applied for, the
Okay.
city has applied for, we've gotten. And
Okay.
so as long as the city staff is putting in the application for the TAP, the paperwork for the TAP, we're generally getting it. So I'll get with David
Tim?
and Milton and find out where we're at on that with Beth Beltran.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer, is that it for you, Mr. Meyer?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. I just wanted to let the commission know, maybe you have received it, or maybe it's just me. I received a letter with regard to the proposed fire station located on Windermere Drive in Jensen Beach. And I want to make sure that the clerk has this in their record unless Mr. Dias has already provided it to the clerk. This is an objection. Do I need to read it into the record, Mr. Mortel, or is?
It's not an agenda item.
It's not, so it's just something, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that this came in, and I have it, and I'll provide it to staff.
Yeah,
And
there are several questions within that. If you give me direction, I'll respond to the questions on your behalf.
That'd be great.
Okay, so you want me to mention them now?
No, I mean, I have the questions. I'll just respond to the
Okay, I'll
person who
talk
wrote
to
the
you.
letter.
We'll talk about it. All right, fine. And then the other thing is that I've been working with a community group, reading, and we're working on reading with children. We've met with the principal at J.D. Parker School, and she has been the new principal for a couple of years during the pandemic, and we're trying to work with her to get more and do more in the community, and mostly to get the parents involved. So I'm hoping to get a program going on Sunday, November 7th, from 2 to 4 p.m. at the Shuffleboard building. I'm asking if it's okay if I use that building as the mayor of Stewart, just to meet with some parents and to have them talk about how they can interface to get more reading done and to get our children together. I think that it's a city building, so we'll still practice some social distancing, but they don't have to wear a mask in that building, but we'll offer them that opportunity if they come. And if nobody objects, I can work with our events coordinator to try to track down and reserve the building for that time. As a member of the Airport Noise Advisory Committee, I'll be attending a meeting at 10 a.m. on October the 28th, put on by Martin County. And I will pass on the agenda to the city manager if he wants to share it or provide it as to what is happening with the Airport Noise Advisory Committee now. And I'll tell you afterwards if anything significant is happening. I don't have all the agenda items with me of what we're considering, but I'll try to provide it to city manager. We did have a meeting in East Stewart regarding the landscaping of the Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and I know that we have a consultant working on that, and I want to make sure that all of our commission gets involved in providing any input to Ms. Gandhi Savdas, and just encourage all of our community members to continue working with her so that we can try to get that plan going for Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Also, when we had that meeting for Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard landscaping plan with the CRA, a lot of people expressed they wanted to have some type of a town hall meeting to deal with other issues, especially in the East Stewart area, but all throughout Stewart, they had some concerns. And so I'm hoping to work with city manager to have a town hall meeting around November 16th or so. It's a Tuesday evening. Let me see if on my calendar. I have an Audubon meeting at that time, but I think that I can put that together for a Tuesday evening. People are concerned about property values, talking to the property appraiser. They were concerned about development issues and opportunities for funding and so on. And I think that I can work with Ms. Gandhi Savdas to create a useful and productive town hall meeting around that time. So city manager, if you could work with staff and myself, I'd appreciate that. My last thing is that I'd like to express how honored I feel to hand over and to give the opportunity. He's already laughing. The opportunity to Merritt Matheson to be the Grand Marshal at the Hobgoblin Parade on Saturday coming up. So this is one of the major feats of the vice mayor. So
I was going to mention the
Thank-
parade, Mayor. And, well, I'll start with that. This Saturday, at 2:30 at Riverwalk Stage, there will be a Halloween costume contest. I know I'll be one of the 4 judges. There are 3 or 4 different categories from children, up to the age of 3, and I believe 4 to 8, and then, I think 9 to 12, as well as dogs. So I encourage everyone to come, dress up, and then after that, there'll be a parade sponsored by Main Street through downtown. I hear Mickey Mouse will be leading it. I've been doing some research and was just up with my children at Disney as part of that research this weekend after the Low Impact Development Conference, which some of our other commissioners were there. It was very eye-opening. I know I'll be talking with our development director about what we learned, but basically, trees can hold an immense amount of water, and we need to take advantage of that. Think of all our trees and all our landscaping as water storage, because here in South Florida, we have a problem not with too little water, but with too much water. And I could go on and on about that, but in the name of time, I'll shift gears to a few other topics. I want to thank Ms. Malike and our clerk who's not here, Ms. Kindle. I had a thrilling time reading last week to J.D. Parker's 2nd grade class during Government Week. I know some of the other commissioners did as well, and I believe our Chief Felicione did, and a few others. I was very fortunate to somehow have been chosen to read to the 2nd grade class, which my older daughter was there, and luckily she didn't ask me too many embarrassing questions. Tomorrow is a LOSUM, Lake Okeechobee System Operations Manual, PDT meeting. They'll be dropping the final chosen management plan on November 2nd, and tomorrow they'll be going over that data with us. We are getting towards the end of hurricane season. Hopefully, we'll be into the dry season. The lake is at 15.9 feet or 15.87 so far. So we're very close, although last year with Hurricane Ida coming through, it was higher, and at this time last year, we were receiving discharges from Lake Okeechobee. So by November 2nd, we'll kind of know, a firm management plan, and then it will go into how they write the actual language for the operations manual as far as how to operate the lake on a given day, depending on what the numbers are. I'm keeping my fingers crossed of what data the Corps gives out, and I spoke with Lieutenant Colonel Polk today about it a little bit, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. If anyone would like to attend, also there's a Rivers Coalition meeting. You can go to their website. It's this coming Thursday, where Lieutenant Colonel Polk and Tim Geisen, as well as Ben Hogarth and from the city of Stewart, will be mentioning some updates on LOSUM. And I believe that meeting will be virtual. You can go Rivers Coalition on their website to get the link there. Other than that,
Will it
Thank
be
you.
held here?
I believe this one is virtual. I will be out of town, so I know we can. They had switched back to some physical meetings, and I think with the high numbers in COVID, they haven't tapered down. I think we're taking the lead a little bit with easing our mask restrictions, but I think, I imagine they'll follow suit soon. But I believe this one is still on the books for virtual.
yeah, that's virtual. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Sorry, I wanted to mention some of the stuff about Palm City Road that Commissioner McDonald touched on. One of the things, he may have mentioned it, but we do have on the books the right turn lane from US 1, a designated right turn lane with right-of-way acquisition at that public shopping center area onto Canner Highway. And hopefully that will steer and direct traffic coming southbound on US 1 to head that way using Canner Highway instead of cutting through onto Palm City Road. And again, City of Stewart, it's out of our jurisdiction to police that illegal U-turn that many residents seem to be making as they're going over the Palm City Bridge heading north and using Palm City Road as that shortcut. But I've spoken to some county commissioners about that because Commissioner McDonald, I've seen the same thing and talked to a lot of residents about that significant amount of traffic heading northbound on Palm City Road, which there hasn't been much large development on Palm City Road at all, but there's a significant increase in that traffic going northbound, and we've especially noticed the backup, during that 4:30 to 5:30 hour at the light there. So that is all. I look forward, and thank you for your push on the traffic counters to get some real stats on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Matheson. Any other comments from any of the commissioners before we move on? Commissioner Meyer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One thing that struck me at the Low Impact Development Conference, and pertinent to what you had brought up at a previous meeting, Vice Mayor, about maintaining the edge of our ponds, hospital ponds specifically. I'd like to, if we need to have a discussion item on it in a future agenda, fine, but there's, I saw research directly out of the University of Florida that showed that you can do a littoral planting or leaving just the edge unmowed, even though some might call it unsightly, cleans up an incredible amount of nitrogen or phosphorus, maybe not a whole lot of nitrogen, but it's hard to do the nitrogen anyway, just by leaving it unmowed. And then you also have habitat for birds. So I would say, I don't know if we need direction for Public Works, but we should walk the talk ourselves and leave a strip along our stormwater ponds so that we can get that nutrient reduction, even if it might look unsightly to some.
I couldn't agree more. Perhaps we should have a discussion topic on it at a future agenda. I agree 100%. Talked with numerous, scientists over the weekend about that topic.
Maybe until we can come up with a plan to plant it out with something that looks really nice and can be managed effectively, at least until then, we should stop polluting our own waterways by mowing it.
And just keep it at a certain level.
A 10-foot buffer.
It's neat, yeah. Can we get,
Just waiting for direction. I don't know if you guys are going to do a motion and a vote or what you're going to do.
need that?
So,
If it's going to be policy, commission-directed policy,
The
then yes.
commission has already directed the city manager to adopt a budget which included the maintenance and the spraying of salt on the perimeter of the pond to do weed control instead of any kind of pesticides. So that's currently in the budget, currently taking place through Public Works. If the commission wants to change that direction, it would take a motion and a vote, and then the city manager would follow the direction of the commission.
can we get it as an investigation and come back as soon as possible?
So one of the recommendations from James Evans from Stetson was, the best way is to cover that area with native littoral plants. But the second best thing, if you want to avoid herbicide use, especially aquatic herbicide use, is just to designate a 10-foot buffer area. And if you wanted to have some visual viewing breaks, those could be used, physically weeded in a certain small area. But covering that with littoral planting. So one of my thoughts in the long term would be going, adopting a future budget and shifting funds to do each pond individually to try and focus on native littoral planting in the ponds.
And for clarification, when you guys are talking about the direction, you're talking about all waterfront properties, right?
All stormwater ponds.
Stormwater retention ponds and eliminating aquatic herbicide use?
We don't use herbicides now.
Well, we do. It's just a different brand. It's not,
it's
we don't
not
use, we don't use
glyphosate.
Not
glyphosate.
rodeo.
It's still an herbicide.
Right.
It's not glyphosate, it's not, but we do use and have used some. So I
So
would,
do we need a motion that we leave a buffer around our stormwater ponds? So I'll make that motion.
Let me hear from Commissioner McDonald first before you make your motion.
Well, I wasn't trying to say anything, but I wasn't at the conference, so I don't have any firsthand information on it. I have to wonder how many complaints we'll get about people think we're not cutting the grass. I mean, does it really make a difference?
Yes. When you cut, either mow or use a herbicide to tidy the edge of the stormwater ponds, all that nutrient goes right into the pond. And it's not, they're not planted with anything. We don't have floating mats. I mean, the function of those is traditionally always been for floodplain management, just to get water off the roadways. All this new research is trying to also make it nutrient reduction. And the simplest thing without any investment, less herbicide, less labor, is to leave a strip along the edge that collects all that and that nutrient.
Could we try it, select a pond or two and try it, see how it looks, how it works, and then come back and and then as a, I'll call it a pilot program, and come back and do the rest of later.
why don't we,
I mean, I don't have any problem with it. I just don't know anything about it.
I know,
so.
it's jumping.
I'd rather see it on as an agenda item.
Okay,
but
exactly.
I
so
think
let's have it
that's-
as an agenda item.
Yeah, I think I'd rather see it as agenda item, but
And I think we have to start somewhere changing the way we think, thinking out of the box. I don't have a sprinkler system. I don't, if it grows, it grows. It doesn't. And more of that needs to happen. But it's going to be a while. It's going to take time to get people to realize that. No one, they call it ugly. Well, we need to change that word too. It's just a lot that needs to be done, and I'm all for it.
My yard is-
All right, I guess we'll have to have a item.
Thank you.
We could have an agenda item in the future. I don't believe, between now and then the next few meetings, we have any plans to spray an aquatic herbicide, but we could give direction to not spray any until after that agenda item.
Oh, don't worry, there won't be any sprayed.
Okay.
Thank you.
There we go.
With that in mind, do you know if any materials from the low impact development meeting is available so that Mr. Leggett or Mr. Tim Volker could have that material to look at if they didn't go to that conference? We'll get that shared with them so they can prepare and everybody can be the same level of knowledge. Mr. Leggett wants to say something?
Yes,
Could you come up here, Mr. Leggett? Thank you. So Public Works Director Milton Leggett.
yes. I have a meeting with the manager in about 2 weeks. I have another meeting this Wednesday and a meeting the following week, reference to Hospital Pond. So I have an answer for, the manager at that time, of what we can use, what we can't use. Also what they're using at the lake also. So it's not just everyone's using some sort of treatment, but I have an answer for you by next week.
Thank
So
you.
we were asked to look at an alternative to treatments to what we were using, and so that's what Mr. Leggett has done. But if the commission as a whole wants to change that methodology to go to a non-spraying or non-anything within a 10-foot buffer, and then work towards littoral plantings as we are able to fund it, then we can do that as well. So it's a desire of the commission. Now, I know I hear what you're saying, Ms. Bruner or Commissioner Bruner, but there's also a faction of folks who want things to look nice. And so when they see a bunch of weeds out there, we're going to get the phone calls. So, and two of those biggest lakes are in East Stewart, and I don't want them to think we're neglecting them. So we've got to make sure that if this is what you're going to do, that we're telling everybody this is a policy that you guys have taken.
Thank you.
So at our future discussion for the agenda item, I'd like to know the cost of in our budget of what we're using to spray per pond, and to know the cost to do with native grasses in a between a 5 and 10 foot wide buffer of approximately 80% of the pond to plant that with native grasses.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So we're going to be comparing and contrasting and see what the best benefit is. Thank you so much. Comments by city manager?
Yes, ma'am. Just an update, the temporary Station 3 is in place, and by next Monday, we'll be staffed and we'll be serving fire rescue calls north of town to our citizens up in that area. You had mentioned earlier about the ANAC meeting. I had been contacted by Mr. Carver about whether the city would be interested in pursuing a 60 DNL ordinance like the county has done. I know that in the past there's been some controversy about that. I've put that off until after your ANAC meeting so that you can speak with your group that you're assigned to, or board that you're assigned to determine what that looks like and the reason why the ANAC may be pushing for that.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
When I was on the ANAC 10 years ago, we went through this whole 60 DNL process. We actually, the city engaged a expert. We produced a at the request of the county in preparation to possibly put this in. And it's also they can get additional grant funding for noise abatement. But what they really want to do is tear houses down. And we produced a interlocal agreement that said that money from the grant, any noise grants, would be equitably distributed to residents in the city of Stewart for soundproofing, and that they would not tear down any homes in Stewart. And the county commission, who wanted an interlocal agreement, refused to even put it on their agenda. So there's the potential for residents to be required when the grant money runs out to soundproof the homes at their own expense when they do a major renovation, if they hit a certain financial threshold at the cost of the renovation. And that could become very costly to residents, especially when you're looking at the values of the structures in and around the area, which is Palm Beach Road, East Stewart, those areas. And so as we're looking at this and going down a road, we want to be very methodical and be very cautious as how do we present so that we go forward, so that we do not cause financial hardship to our residents.
Yes, as one of the persons who live on the airport property, essentially, it's right
They're
in my
coming for
backyard.
your street.
Huh?
They're coming for your street.
Yes, we've resisted it for many years. And I'm on the ANAC now, so I appreciate the comment, and I will talk to city manager. Maybe we'll have city manager attend the ANAC meeting also.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah,
They're loads of fun.
yeah. So, any other additions to what the city manager was saying? Nope. We have an agenda that has been published. What is the pleasure of the board regarding the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner McDonald, seconded by Commissioner Meyer. All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda has been unanimously adopted as published. We have time for comments from the public, 3 minutes. I do not see any green cards. I'm not sure if anybody wants to speak. Mr. McChrystal and Ms. Rudge, or Ms. Hall. Ms. Karen Hall, Yost Rudge. Clerk, can you assist her? There,
Thank you, Manager.
thank you.
All right. Good evening, Karen Hall, 1701 Southwest Palm City Road. Thank you for your service, each one of you. Now, I came at 4:30 when you're going into your city attorney special client meetings because you were discussing 3 lawsuits, and I hope we get an update on that. I'm particularly interested in Robin Cartwright versus city. But I continually ask you guys, to deal with the 19th Circuit. It's the state court, and I said Mike Mortel isn't really fair to do it, and nobody listened to me. So today was filed in federal court. Okay, it was filed today in federal court. And so October 25th, and the number is 2114425. And this time, it's coming for the city of Stewart, but also Mr. Mortel as an individual. So all along, I've asked you not to allow him to be counsel when it wasn't appropriate. So now he has to answer for himself. The summons hasn't come. I guess the U.S. Marshals are bringing it. But Mr. Mortel has to answer for himself now. So now he can't be your counsel. And I'm sorry it came this far. But, I can't be ignored. I'm an American, all right? And I know how the law works, and my government protects me. My government doesn't harm me, and when they do harm me, then there's some remedy for it. So I only wanted you to guys have that when you went into your meeting today because you have another lawsuit, but this one's federal. Anyway, thank you for, I guess, ignoring me, but it's okay. I have nothing against anybody personally. I just love the rule of law, and I love my city and my county and my country. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Wren. Next person is Mr. Frank McChrystal.
Thank you. Good evening. Glad I came. Mayor Clark, in regards to the ANAC committee,
Yes, sir.
I'm glad it's finally back in business, out from the cover of COVID. I've been to many ANAC meetings, and I would hope that for the first time in my view, that the representative for the city of Stewart is a staunch protector of the citizens of the city of Stewart, okay? So they will fudge the numbers and tweak the numbers and make it sound all rosy. For instance, they'll tell you how great, as a percentage, the noise, not the abatement, but the curfew. They'll show you how great the curfew numbers are. Okay, not so. Jet traffic has more than doubled since 2013. So they'll fudge the numbers any way they can to make it seem rosy. Another main concern of mine is runway 1230 is the longest runway at Witham. It was the one that was illegally extended by 480 feet in 1998 so that the bigger jets could take off with a full tank. And overnight, our community went from a quiet community to what we have now. But what I would hope you would be able to do is work on the curfew numbers, okay? Because it's just a handful of violators, okay? We know who they are, and they don't care. And it's the same thing with runway 1230 is the runway for jets. It is the suggested runway for all jets. When the wind is in a certain direction, low winds out of the north, okay, those jets could still be using 1230. But there's still just a handful of operators who insist on using runway 1634. And as you represent the city of Stewart, I want you to strongly get this point across, that when those jets use runway 1634, they are affecting at least 20 times more people than the designated runway for jets, where the jets get up at a higher level before they get off the airport property. And I know you're affected, Mrs. Clark, but they're over US 1 as soon as possible. They affect the least amount of people. That's why that runway is the designated runway for jets. So you got two issues that we can work with. And I would say, please recognize that the Witham Field history is a dark part of our Martin County history. It really is. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other persons with comments from the public? Thank you. We have a consent agenda that has been published. Is there any?
Move for approval.
Mr. McDonald has moved for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Matheson. Any comments from the public regarding the motion on the consent agenda? Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matheson,
Yes.
and Mayor Clark.
Yes. Our next agenda item is item number 4, which I believe needs to be read by the city attorney, and we need to move this. It's been asked to be moved to a date certain on 11/8/2021. Resolution number 86-2021.
It would be Resolution 86, 2021, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, to approve an amendment to a major development site plan at Monterey Medical Center located at 1050 Southeast Monterey Road, Stewart, to expand the parking lot to provide additional parking stalls, providing for an effective date and for other purposes.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to continue Resolution 86-2021 to November 8th here in this chambers at the time of the regular commission meeting.
Second.
Thank you. A motion by Commissioner, Vice Mayor Matheson, seconded by Commissioner Meyer. Are there any comments from our board members on item number 4 being put off to 11/8/2021? Any members of the public have any comment on that? Clerk, let's have a roll call to make sure.
Vice Mayor Matheson,
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
and Mayor Clark.
Yes. Our next item is item number 5, authorize a road closure for 2022 Stewart Boat Show, resolution number 90-2021. Mr. Martell?
Resolution 90-2021, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, approving a road closure for the 48th Annual Stewart Boat Show from Tuesday, January 11th at 5 a.m. through Monday, January 17th at 5 p.m. 2022, along Northwest Dixie Highway, formerly known as State Road 707, from Albany Avenue south of the old Roosevelt Bridge to Fern Street at the FEC Railroad Crossing, north of the St. Lucie River Drawbridge, subject to Florida Department of Transportation approval, providing for an effective date and for other purposes.
Thank you so much. Do we have something from staff on this matter?
Other than this is the second time that you're going to be approving this as of last year, and what we've done is we've made some improvements to the traffic flow by requiring the Stewart Boat Show and Marine Industries to provide traffic officers on US 1 during peak hour areas, which they're redirecting traffic during those time periods. Last year, I mean, it is what it is. We didn't really have many major problems with it. It was the best year we've had with it so far. The only other change there is from last year is that instead of there being 3 digital signs, there's 2 digital signs based upon the traffic engineer's recommendation, who's Susan O'Rourke, who submitted a report that's in your package.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second by Commissioner McDonald, and then a second by Vice Mayor Matheson. Do any of the commissioners have any comments?
If the Marine Industries is here, the only thing I'd say is, The boat show is, I encourage the boat show to grow, but it needs to consider its location with the fact that there are offers, at times, and some haven't moved much, but at the north point of Stewart, and we need to just constantly be thinking about the future. I know I'm very supportive of a boat show here in the city of Stewart, but just be mindful of the location and the ability to grow and be a very beneficial boat show.
Thank you. Members of the public, we have Mr. Tom Whittingham from the Marine Industries.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, thank you very much. 48 years. Yes, we are quite aware the city has grown. Last year was our largest attendance. I, of course, think people just wanted to get outside.
Yeah.
Thank you for helping us to allow that to happen. To staff, to Mr. Kurowski especially, it was a smooth show. We were very, very pleased. The marine industry does a lot more than just the boat show, and the boat show capital lets us do things like the beach cleanup. We're really, like many people, working on job force readiness right now. So we've got a lot of things that this boat show every year is allowing us to do. We are certainly looking at the future, trying to figure out what that's going to work out. There is some really neat development going on in Stewart right now. We're talking to all of them. I'm just here to thank you and appreciate your approval.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Any comments from commissioners? We've had a motion and a second. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matheson?
Yes.
And Mayor Clark.
Yes. Our next item is the authorization to apply for the Community Development Block Grant COVID Program, Resolution Number 104-2021. Mr. Mortel.
Resolution 104-2021, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, authorizing the mayor or the city manager to apply to the Florida Department of Economics Opportunity for the Community Development Block Grant, or Cdbg, FYI Federal Fiscal Year 2021 COVID Program, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
Thank you so much. Mr. Freeman, do you want to say a few words before we have our consultant?
Ms. Conde Savas.
It's my item.
Ms. Sasso, I didn't see you.
Right here.
I'm sorry, thank you.
So this is the second presentation of the CDBG COVID program. The first time it was presented to you about a few months ago, where the board discussed activities that we should be undertaking for the CDBG COVID program. The board directed staff to apply for the pre-application for the acquisition and rehab of the Willie Gary building on MLK. So we made the pre-application. This is the second phase of the application process. We're required to make a second presentation, so the consultant is here to make that presentation. We will be making the final application. The deadline for that is November 1st. And at the end of the presentation, staff is requesting approval of resolution number 104-2021, authorizing to apply for the CDBG COVID program. And I'll let Corbett give the presentation.
Thank you. Our consultant, please.
Good evening, Corbett Alliday with Guardian Community Resource Management, offices Dade City for the record. Thank you all for having us here once again. This is a Community Development Block Grant Application Public Hearing, CDBG. I have a short presentation for you, then it would go to the public for public comment, and then it would come back to the board to follow the proper CDBG procedures. This is a special appropriation of CDBG funds for COVID-19. Is there a clicker? Thank you.
That's what I thought.
Thank you very much. Oh, there we go. I thought I was just being loud. This is a CDBG application. CDBG applications come from HUD to the state of Florida. Then there's a competitive application process. CDBG funds must benefit low and moderate income persons. There are other there are three options for use of CDBG funds. Low and moderate income persons is the most important. 70% of funds must be used to benefit low and moderate income persons. You can also use it to remove slum and blight, such as working in your CRA area. And you can also use it, there's sometimes special appropriations for disasters to benefit low and moderate income persons who have been affected by hurricanes. This is a special appropriations for COVID. So there's an additional requirement that we prevent, prepare for, or respond to the coronavirus. And we have to demonstrate a direct effect, cost associated with coronavirus prevention, such as rehabbing a building to create additional quarantine or isolation or more testing centers, and then indirect effects such as economic impacts. To give you an idea of what low to moderate income is, it changes every year according to HUD, but according to HUD, low to moderate income this year is for a family of four is $57,200, just to give you an idea. The recommended project is to acquire the Gary Plaza, located at 720 Southeast Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in East Stewart, to convert, rehab, and reuse the facility as a micro enterprise, business incubator, and or job training center. The estimated budget is $4.7 million with administration, engineering, additional engineering, such as testing that'll have to be done on that building, construction, acquisition, and then project delivery and inspection. There was the process overall, there was a first public hearing, a pre-application, and then a second public hearing, which we're having today, and then the application will be finalized and submitted this week. You'll be able to sign everything, all the certifications after this resolution is approved. And with that, I'm here for questions or comments.
Thank you. Board members?
Can I give just a quick staff update?
Oh, sorry.
A quick staff update on what's occurred with the property since we've last had the discussion about the CDBG grant. So as you may or may not know, that property has gone under contract a couple of different times and has failed the contract, and the potential buyers have gotten out of it. However, there is currently a contract on that property with a going through its due diligence phase with a projected closing date in February. If we were to pursue this grant, we would probably have, not probably, we would have a administrative fee as it relates to our consultant, so that he doesn't, get left handing the bag for going through this process, obviously. And I've also learned today that the cost of the property has increased because of the interest that has surrounded the property to somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million from the 896. However, I do not anticipate changing our formula or what we have allocated in the grant. I would utilize, which is completely open for utilization, ARPA funding to offset the cost from what it was before to what it is going to be if we end up getting the property. I do know that Mr. Gary, thanks to the mayor for setting up a telephone conference call today, does still wish for the city to pursue this project. But obviously, he has to maintain all of his options, and whether or not we receive the grant is still up in the air. With that information, I encourage you guys to deliberate on whether or not you think we should proceed. And I personally believe that the risk of the $5,000 is worth going for and still pursuing the grant.
I agree.
Thank you. Did you have a comment, Mr. McDonald, or?
I just said I agree on the first, the risk for the $5,000.
Yes. Any other comments from any other board members?
I agree also.
Is there a motion with regard to item number
I think we have to hear
6?
from the public.
We had a motion already? No, we didn't.
No, I think we have to hear from the public.
Right, yeah, but,
Next, before we come back to deliberate.
okay, all right, well, all right. So is there any comment from the public on the presentation from Mr. Collett? Can you tell me your name again?
Corbett?
Corbett, sorry. Mr. McChrystal, we'll accept your second bite of the apple. Thank you on this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Is this on?
Yes, sir. I hope so.
Just a general question about grants. Grants in general. Federal grants, state grants. From what I see, only thing we have to, so this goes under a COVID grant. That final facility will have some way of helping treat or helping deal with future COVID outbreaks. Is that what I understand? That's the only thing that is expected of us to get this federal grant. But in general, I'd kind of like to understand, maybe there's nothing in writing, but is there kind of like a wink and a nod type of thing? Like when we accept grants from the feds or from the state, do they have some kind of leverage over us or some sort of expectations of us in other ways in general? And I'm still having, it isn't just the city, but it seems like everyone is getting these grants based on COVID. And it just seems a little bit disingenuous to me. All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from the public? Ms. Helen McBride is approaching.
Yes, Ellen McBride, Flamingo Avenue. I've been here and been listening to why we'd like to acquire this piece of land. There is a history in that. And I think we should definitely go forward and try to get this money, because what you all plan on doing with the money, it's not for COVID, like we're all going to come down sick. It's for the future, especially our young people. And that's, keep our young people here with jobs, train them, and you're doing a good job on it, and I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Commissioners,
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 104, 2021.
Second.
there's a motion by Vice Mayor Matheson, second by Commissioner Bruner, with regard to approving resolution number 104, 2021. We've had comment from the public, and we've had a presentation by staff and our consultant. At this time, without any further questions, we'll ask the clerk to, unless any commissioners have any other comments, we'll ask the clerk to call the roll, please, for the vote in.
Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matheson?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
And Commissioner Meyer?
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, sir. The next letter is a letter of support for the Lucie Headwaters Initiative, and this is resolution number 111-2021. Attorney Mortel?
This is resolution number 111-2021, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, adopting and endorsing a letter of support for the newly formed Lucie Headwaters Initiative, created for the purpose of restoring natural hydrology of lands adjoining the Loxahatchee and St. Lucie rivers, while conserving thousands of acres of land for the preservation of plants and wildlife thereupon, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Kralski. Or Mr. Hogard. Okay.
I'm good, yeah. Good evening, Commissioners. Ben Hogarth, Community Services for the record. This letter was something that we put together quickly. It was a turnaround. Some of the other communities around the area have already supported this initiative. For the public, for the benefit of the public to know, this has to do with wildlife corridor. And although it sort of got detracted in the media and the press earlier this year, there was a Wildlife Corridor Act that was passed in the Florida legislature. Unfortunately, it coincided with the Surfside tragedy, so there wasn't a lot of talk about it. What this is probably the largest wildlife corridor initiative that we will see in our region. Isn't that recording? Oh, yeah. Apologies. I'm going to actually introduce Greg Braun, who's going to be doing the presentation, but I just wanted to kind of give a background on where this came from for staff when we put this together. There's already been several cities and communities around the area that have approved a resolution in support of it, but I'll let Greg take it away for now. Thanks.
Mr. Braun?
Good evening. My name is actually Matt Sexton. I'm with the Conservation Fund, and we're a national nonprofit conservation organization. I'm actually based here locally in Stewart, and one of the reasons for that is the city of Stewart has a long history of fighting to protect the waters that surround it. In the early 2000s, the Conservation Fund worked with the city of Stewart to help buy lands for the Haney Creek and Poppleton Creek greenways. And like that initiative, the Lucie Headwaters initiative is geared towards protecting the waters of the Loxahatchee, or the St. Lucie River, the Indian River Lagoon, but also the Loxahatchee River to the south. And so Greg Braun, who's Executive Director of the Guardians of Martin County, one of the 3 nonprofits that are helping spearhead this initiative, is going to speak with you in detail about the project. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Matt, for that introduction, and thank you, Commissioners, for offering us the opportunity to come and speak to you about the Lucie Headwaters project. We've certainly been working with Ben. Several of you have seen this presentation at Rivers Coalition meetings or the Realtors Association, one place or another, but we appreciate being given the opportunity to give it to all of you. And I've actually put in some slides because I know you guys are specifically interested in water quality kinds of things, and this project certainly brings that home. So just to start off with that first slide, I want to talk about headwaters. You know, many people don't know what headwaters are, but this is an aerial photo taken by drone by local artist and artisan Jeffrey Smith, and this is what the Lucie headwaters are. It's not the pretty flowing creek that people can canoe and kayak down. These are the wetlands that are they go squish when you walk through them, and water during the rainy season flows off of those into the Lucie, the headwaters for the Loxahatchee and the St. Lucie. Next slide there, Ben. So this is overall just a location map for where this is at, and so I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to talk with you about it, because no, it's not within the city boundary. But just like you guys are in the receiving end of what happens from water coming down the C-44, so you are also on the receiving end of water that leaves from the boundary of this project. So we're all east of I-95 and the Turnpike, west of the developed US 1 corridor in Hobe Sound, and generally bounded by Jonathan Dickinson to the south and Cove Road to the north. Next slide. What really brought us to this is, you may know that the Atlantic Ridge Preserve State Park is kind of a hidden gem right here. Not too many people go off and recreate, but it's right here in our backyards, not too well known. But one of the processes that the state goes through is something called identifying the optimal or the optimum boundary. So the state park system is required to go through this process and kind of identify what properties would they own if they could, if there was a perfect world, to control their own destiny on how they would manage their property. So this is the slide right out of the Atlantic Ridge Preserve State Park Management Plan. And you see the state park properties there in the blue horizontal hatching. The properties in the red are the ones that the state has said they would like to buy. And those are the ones in our project boundary north of Bridge Road. It's been on the state's acquisition list for over a decade, but I'm sorry to report we have had 0 acquisitions within that. So this is a grassroots effort. We're trying to jumpstart that because we know that the folks up in Tallahassee who make the decision about how to allocate Florida Forever money, they have a complex kind of mathematical calculation about how to get points on it. 2 of the big criterias are grassroots support. And in over 10 years, there has never been anyone up there lobbying to tell them that we'd like this property purchased. And number 2 is financial considerations. And we've got to recognize that here we are, highly developed Southeast Florida. The dollars per acre in here are certainly putting us at a disadvantage when they are looking at the larger tracts up in North Florida. So to try to address that, they have this sort of category about financial considerations, and one of those is matching funds. So our initiative is to try to indeed get grassroots support, number 1, and financial support from within the community to take to Tallahassee and say, not only do our residents support this, but here's essentially a check for however many $1 million we can raise to make this a reality. Next slide, Ben. So this is the map showing the Florida Forever project boundary. So again, the Atlantic Ridge Preserve State Park is in the purple, and those green parcels are the ones that they would like to buy. So it's not exactly the same map as the Atlantic Ridge Preserve State Park, but it's similar in that most of those large tracts are ones that are on both of those acquisition lists. Next slide. So we know that you are very interested in water quality kinds of things. So I thought you'd be interested in this map. Ben has probably shown it to you in the past. It shows the different contributing watershed basins into the St. Lucie Estuary. And you see that by far the largest one at over 40,000 acres is the South Fork Basin. And many of those properties within that area, that green polygon, are ones that are within our acquisition list. Next slide. So how can we deal with water quality? You know, we certainly are concerned and have been concerned for years or decades with water quality coming down from the C-44 in Lake Okeechobee. We know that that overwhelms the estuary. Well, Ben has probably shown you at various times the Florida Oceanographic Society's maps showing water quality. And so this is one from just a couple weeks ago showing in colors and grade, elementary school grades A through F, the water quality in the different surface waters in the area, not just the city of Stewart, but all the way out to the Indian River Lagoon. And so I've circled in red what we should all be ashamed of. We got an F. And yes, indeed, there was water coming down from Lake Okeechobee at that time, and we can indeed blame the Corps, or, as you are doing, trying to work collaboratively with them over a several decade period to stop that. But go ahead to the next slide, if you would, Ben. Even when there is no discharge coming out the C-44, if you see here in the winding South Fork section of the river, we still have an F. The water quality in there is just bad, and we need to try to figure out what's going on there and to do what we can to address it. Now, you're working with the DEP on the B maps and all that sort of thing for waters that are already impaired. Well, we have some control over our own destiny, and that is to acquire properties that are currently undeveloped within the watershed. Next slide. So we think that this is pretty much a no-brainer. It's certainly positive for the city of Stewart. It affects human health positively, certainly recreation, whether you're a boater or a fisherman, kayaker, stand-up paddleboarder, whatever you would be, or even that picture up in the upper left When I was on the river a couple years ago, I got that picture of some kids out doing the Huck Finn rafting down the South Fork. We'd like to have the water quality in the South Fork to be able to continue that. But snook fishing, endangered species, there's a little bit of this, little bit of everything in this whole project. Next slide. So our committee, steering committee, which it consists of not only the Conservation Fund, but also the Treasured, excuse me, the Treasured Lands Foundation, which is based down in Hobe Sound. Those two organizations and the Guardians of Martin County are the three nonprofit organizations that are kind of spearheading all of this. And yes, we're based down in Hobe Sound, but we've got people engaged in this from throughout the community. We went through a process of trying to identify the parcels that are of most interest to us, and these were the criteria that we came up with. Certainly it needs to be environmentally valuable lands. Ideally, we want restorable hydrology. And most of the properties in that area, well, they're not in too bad a condition, but many of them have been managed for many years for cattle pasture. What that has done is it has artificially drawn down the water table, and indeed runoff from those properties is what's coming into the South Fork. So we want to restore that hydrology. We certainly want to permanently protect the corridor between Jonathan Dickinson and Atlantic Ridge. You know, here are these thousands of acres of public lands that are separated by only a couple miles. Well, we know that the wildlife is using that because unfortunately through this, we did a wildlife mortality study and we came up with hundreds of dead animals on Bridge Road. They're just trying to get from the wetlands on one side to the wetlands on the other side, and Bridge Road is unfortunately the only major corridor that is bisecting those natural lands. So we've been talking with the county about wildlife crossings and one thing or another, and it's certainly our hope that through this project we'll be able to address that as well. Preventing urban sprawl, there are certainly parcels that are within the county's secondary urban services boundary. Could they be developed? Yes. Should they be developed? Well, they've got a high percentage of wetlands, and so the reason that they haven't been developed yet is the economics just aren't there to make it work. So our project is to not take their land from them, but offer to willing sellers the price that they want so that we can bring this into public ownership. Restore the natural water flows. Certainly you've read about the recurring flooding problems down in Hobe Sound. We're working with the county and Commissioner Jenkins to try to figure out how to reroute the water so that it doesn't flood those properties that are east of US 1. Saltwater intrusion, you know, you don't need to spend too much time talking with the folks at the Loxahatchee River. You know, they're suffering from saltwater intrusion as the cypress continue to die and get replaced by the mangrove community. Recreational opportunities, yes, it may be a little bit of a pie-in-the-sky dream to be able to ride horseback from Jonathan Dickinson to Atlantic Ridge, but through both purchase of the properties and conservation easements from willing sellers, we're hoping to at least be able to get a multi-use path so people and animals will be able to move through that area. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about the timeline. Little did we know about the pandemic coming. We started this whole initiative a couple of years ago, and our rollout of the program was to be in March of 2020. And we had already sent out invitations. Several of you probably got those, and indeed we had to pull the whole thing back when COVID, the outbreak got so bad. We have continued to meet, though, by Zoom, and it's made these kinds of presentations much more challenging, but we have had, we think, a very successful outreach program. We have interacted with a number of the governmental entities, and so that leads to your ordinance, which we hope you will adopt unanimously. But we've also met with some of the other local governments. We've talked with the homeowners associations of residential neighborhoods and some of the environmental governmental organizations. And yes, I was up in Tallahassee 2 weeks ago with the Conservation Fund staff. We were making our appeal to the Florida Forever decision makers. And I'd say we were pretty warmly received. Next slide, please. So we have gotten key endorsements from a variety of entities. Probably the most notable ones there are water quality related people. And you all certainly follow the politics at Martin County. We were very pleased to get a unanimous endorsement by the Martin County Commission. Those guys don't often agree unanimously on anything, but they were all in support of this, and I think they looked at the long-term benefits of the program. From a water quality perspective, the Rivers Coalition endorsed this, and you see a copy of the letter from Mark Perry there. The Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program, they're looking at not only the Indian River Lagoon water quality, but what affects that is those waters from the Loxahatchee and the South Fork, and of course all the other tributaries in the system. Some of the other nonprofit groups, the local Audubon chapter and the Native Plant Society, have also been supportive. And this is just a partial list. I've got copies of the letters of endorsement from other organizations on our Lucie Headwaters website. So with that, I'd be glad to try to answer any questions, and if there are detailed questions about financing kinds of things, this is the money man, so he could answer those.
Thank you, Mr. Braun. Mr. Hogarth, do you have anything else before we go to our commissioners with questions? I see Commissioner.
No, I'm here to answer from a staff perspective if anyone has questions.
Okay, Commissioner McDonald.
Greg, this is actually the second time at least the second time. I'm pretty sure it's the second. I don't think I've seen it a third time. Great presentation. I think that this is very good, and I support the letter. So I just want to tell you, I thought it's a good program you guys are putting together. So I think it's very inclusive, and you've done a great job of explaining it too. So
great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Braun. I feel like we're back in old school days. Thank you, Mr. Meyer, Mr. Matheson.
Thank you,
Any
Madam Mayor.
questions?
Well, I just wanted to also thank Mr. Braun for coming. We actually have him scheduled to speak next week to the Treasure Coast Council of Local Governments. I think private land acquisition for conservation purposes is a very important tool in our toolkit. And so, I'm glad to see such a large effort happening, because there's only so much we can do with, our zoning and, land use decisions as local government bodies. So I'm excited to see a project of this scale. And, for anybody out there who, again, to bring it back to, this is not necessarily in the city of Stewart, of course, but, we're one community. Martin County is very different. What sets us apart is our land stewardship and our record across the state, our record number of acres relative to the size of our county that's in conservation. And so this benefits us. It benefits us for water quality, but it also benefits us because the people who live in the city of Stewart we're not stuck, behind the boundary of the city. Like, I go to Haupadioke and trail ride all the time, and I love the parks, and we recreate there, and so this benefits our entire community. Couldn't support it enough, and I'll look forward to writing you a check from my own personal account to pay my way, so thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Braun.
Commissioner Matheson.
I just want to thank you, Mr. Braun, for bringing this forward. I have seen this a couple times, and it's an excellent initiative. I look forward to supporting it on behalf of the city and as well as I can personally. We'll be heading to Tallahassee this session.
I'll move
We will
for approval then.
We will indeed.
Excellent.
We've got a two-prong approach there. One is certainly working with the decision makers for the Florida Federal Program, but also we're working with our legislators to try to come up with an appropriation specifically for the continued acquisition in these properties within the boundary.
Yeah, the headwaters of the South Fork were a major topic a couple weeks ago when we gave a boat tour to Governing Board Member Roman. Obviously, we can't get too far up there in a boat, but just that distinction was very, very beneficial for a South Florida Water Management District member to see personally, where the water flows out of the S80 structure from the C44 and then moving up to I kept calling it the natural South Fork, and it didn't really click till we went up a mile or so up there and I showed her on an iPad what I meant by the headwaters of this natural South Fork and where fresh water that was beneficial for our estuary, if it was truly clean, fresh water, would be coming from. So thank you, and I'll second Commissioner McDonald's motion for approval.
Commissioner Meyer?
And I just want to make sure, let's not forget, another important part here is that, you know, we might have to fight to get on the list, the priority list, but let's also remind everybody that the Florida voters approved Florida Forever, $300 million a year, and the legislature continues to fall far short of that, of that funding. I think 30-something million in 2019, a little more last year, surprisingly, but you know, we got to keep on them about that too. That's if it's funded at less than half, of course, it's going to be hard to get these projects approved. So anyway,
Thanks.
I wanted
We've had you have a question, Commissioner Bruner?
I just wanted to say thank you in all the years that you've been at this, and it's just wonderful. And any land acquisitions in the state of Florida, I am for. I always say, I don't care how much it costs. 50 years from now, we're going to look back and say that's the best deal I ever made. And when you get up there to Tallahassee, I know there's so many of them that say, we've got all this land. We keep buying all this land. How can we take care of all this land? We can figure it out. And another piece that I want to see happen too is the way that the Panther, there's a little bit of land, I guess, west of Okeechobee, right there at a certain place. We need to get that too. That way he can travel and into the Everglades. And this is just, we need that. We got to have that little piece to connect it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, there is indeed a Florida Wildlife Corridor project. And you're right, most of the properties that are within that are on the west side of Lake Okeechobee. But there is a portion on the east side, and it includes lands in our project area. So we're going for it.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. As we have a motion by Commissioner McDonald and second by Commissioner Vice Mayor, that motion is to submit a letter signed by the mayor as well as the attached resolution. And I'd just like to read the letter into the record for the public that will be signed. To members of the steering committee and whom it may concern, City Commission of the City of Stewart is pleased to present this letter and the enclosed resolution of support for the Lucie Headwaters Conservation Initiative. The initiative's lofty goal of establishing a protected ecological corridor and connecting the sources of the Waxahachie and the St. Lucie rivers by the conservation and preservation of nearly 70,000 acres of land is a worthy endeavor. The benefits of the initiative will complement the goals and desires of Stewart and adjacent communities who have pursued invariable the restoration of the St. Lucie Estuary and its tributaries. For nearly 2 decades, the City of Stewart has made a serious commitment to protect the St. Lucie River and surrounding environment in the form of conservation, restoration, and preservation projects that improve water quality while mitigating future harm. In so doing, the city has invested considerable financial resources while lobbying for policy change at state and federal levels of government. However, the grassroots efforts reflected by the work of the initiative and with the aid and support of the Guardians of Martin County, the Conservation Fund, the Treasured Lands Foundation, serves as both an example and a potential catalyst for the systemic change we have long sought. The hydrologic and ecological restoration of acquired lands proposed by the initiative will ensure that future generations of coastal residents and visitors alike will share in the benefits of a cleaner, safer, and more prosperous community and environment. For those reasons and many more, the City of Stewart is pleased to endorse the Lucie Headwaters Initiative in all of its many tireless efforts and endeavors to come. Sincerely, Eula Clark, Mayor, and of course endorsed by our City Commission in their motion, as well as the proposed resolution that was published and the heading that was read by our city attorney. Is this still the pleasure of the board?
Yes.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Matheson,
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
and Mayor Clark.
Thank you, yes. Thank you, Mr. Hogart, for your work. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thanks, Ben.
Okay, our next item, and thank you, Mr. Braun and company. Thank you. Our next item is item number 8, Osprey Preserve Rpud Restoration Plan, Resolution number 118-2021. Mr. Mortel?
Resolution number 118-2021, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, accepting the revised restoration plan for Osprey Preserve, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
Mr. Tom Reeds,
Yes.
Staff, Development Department.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mayor, good evening, Commissioners. This is the Osprey Preserve Restoration Plan proposal. If you remember, it was proposed on October 11th, and you asked the applicant to bring back a recommendation with the following: a restoration phasing plan that included larger trees, a method of irrigation for the restoration, and timing for the installation of the perimeter retaining wall. The applicant, Meritage, has submitted a phasing mitigation schedule that includes 2 phasing as well as irrigation and timing for the retaining wall. They have submitted a revised restoration calculation according to the Land Development Code. The new amount is $55,125. These are trees that would not fit in the buffer, the new buffer, and the restored buffer area. Staff still retains the surety bond to ensure the restoration of the buffer. With that, staff recommends that the Commission consider the revised restoration plan and mitigation contribution with proposed phasing necessary for the project to proceed. The applicant has given us a short PowerPoint presentation, which I'll load right now.
Good evening.
Yes, sir.
My name is Mark McFarland with Meritage Homes of West Palm Beach, Florida. As you recall from a couple of weeks ago, the restoration plan, which is shown on the screen here, more or less hasn't changed from before. The only change that was made, there were 19 laurel oaks that were proposed before that were 3-inch caliber in size, and it's a request of Commissioner Mayer, I believe. We did increase those trees to 6-inch caliber, and in that the height increased to about 22 to 25 feet in planted height. So if you look at the cross section, it shows the little higher tree there than everything else. That's the laurel oaks that were revised in there and added. What we did also is we did propose a phasing plan. So if you recall from our previous presentation, there is a 10-foot hedge of buttonwoods that are along a retaining wall that we have. Those buttonwoods along the retaining wall are considered a phase 2. We can't get too close to the retaining wall, so that's why the planting of those will be delayed. But everything else is proposed in what we're calling phase 1. And that phase 1 we are committing to starting in 2 weeks from today, November 8th. That is the quickest that our landscape company, they've actually already started procuring the plantings. So between getting their workforce available and getting all of the trees on site, that was the quickest that we could mobilize them and get started on the plantings of phase one. As I mentioned before, phase two is those buttonwoods along a retaining wall. The retaining wall, there's two parts to the retaining wall. It's a precast wall, so all of the concrete is poured off-site for the walls. It's brought in in segments and installed. Our company has actually started manufacturing those walls already. I think they were going to start them actually next week or today, but they started last week. They were able to get it done a little early. And they are going to be starting to install those wall segments on, I want to get this right, here it is, on November 19th. So in about another 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, excuse me, wall segments will be starting to be installed. So again, 2 weeks we'll start the trees, the major trees, the pines, the oaks, the understories under them, and another week after that we will start the wall. Wall's going to take about a month or so to install, so about mid-December the wall will be done. All of the landscape planting is about a 5 or 6 week period to do all of the landscaping. Sounds like a long time, but there's a lot of trees, a lot of shrubs, a lot of understory that has to go in there. So about 5 or 6 weeks to get that done. Once the wall is done in mid-December, we'll be able to go on and plant those buttonwoods, which takes us to early January. During this whole time, we will be watering all of the trees with water trucks. Unfortunately, any source of on-site water just isn't available. So there is a small pond we have on site, but it doesn't have any water in it right now, so we have nothing there. Plus, there's no electricity out there, so we don't have a source to put a well in or anything yet. So until we do get the well and everything in place, an irrigation system, we will irrigate with water trucks. So I guess all said and done, everything will be done and accomplished by early to mid-January, and it's all spelled out here in this letter. You know, it's a significant increase in time from our original thought. Obviously, we were going to wait and probably start in January, but now starting in 2 weeks and getting everything done by that time, we hope satisfies concerns of the board and would allow us to resume construction on our model home soon, very soon. I know our construction department is looking to start hopefully next week, so I hope you will grant us that thought, knowing that we are committed to get this work done very soon. And as was mentioned by Mr. Reitz, we have our bond in place to assure that we get everything done and done on a schedule that meets this schedule. So if there are any questions, obviously I'm here and be happy to answer.
So you're going to plant 15 feet of the buffer. You're going to leave 10 feet, which is the buttonwoods.
Well, the buffer is 30 feet, so we've
Okay,
planned 20.
Okay, so 20 feet of the buffer.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you're going to start work on the wall immediately. When will vertical construction start under your plan?
We are actually looking to start next week, a week from today.
Yeah, that's not going to work for me.
Okay, and
That's the buffer needs to,
be in place.
at the very minimum, everything except for the buttonwoods need to be in for me.
So
I
let me
think I said that at the last meeting, so
Yeah,
at the
but-
very minimum.
Yes.
And I'm not convinced, if you wouldn't have recklessly cut down the trees, how would you said you can't put the wall in with the trees there, but how would you have done the wall with the trees?
Well, just the buttonwoods, but we.
Oh, yeah, but the original buffer.
Oh, yeah, the original
If
buffer.
there
That's
ever,
why
how
we
would
can
you have
put
done it
in-
with the original buffer there?
The buttonwoods are immediately adjacent to the wall. Not necessarily 10 feet. They're right there. They take up a few feet probably. And that's all we would have had to remove, and that's all that was originally approved in the clearing plan was just a couple of feet outside of the limits of the wall. So nothing is changing really on that front. It's just we physically can't put those buttonwoods in place and build the wall at the same time. They're just too close to one another.
Okay.
Right,
So either way, I can't support it until the main at the very minimum, the main buffer is completely in.
Yes. I do understand your concern on that front, and as I said at the last meeting, everything from our company, we are extremely remorseful over what happened and what was done. It was totally inadvertent, not done on purpose. It serves to benefit nobody. In the long run, I mean, it's a detriment to our project by taking down that natural buffer. That was it was a resource to our project, so taking it down in the manner it did was wrong, and this goes a long way to restoring, in the long run, we think, what the mistake that was made. However, to hold us back from starting construction, what would be a couple of months, would be a significant impact. I mean, we've already waited 2 months, honestly, I think we had originally wanted to start in mid-September. So we're now about 6 weeks after that time. So obviously it is up to the board to make that decision, but I would, implore you to allow us to start in a week with this approved plan, with our bond in place, and knowing that if we do not meet these milestones, obviously a stop work order can be placed on us immediately, and until we get back on schedule. But I don't see that happening.
How long did you say it will take, your estimation, to plant everything but the buttonwoods and the wall?
About 5 or 6 weeks from start.
Which is in about 2 weeks, you said, right?
Yeah, they'll be starting on November 8th, and completion would be about December 17th, at the latest. There's a chance we could finish a little bit before that.
Are you willing to put 50% of your bond up if it's not done by the 17th?
Absolutely.
December?
Yes.
And 100% if that's not done by the 24th?
Yes.
I don't know how that works, but.
I mean, the entire bond is at risk, should we not perform.
Perform by December 17th?
Yes. Well, yes. Yes, the entire bond would be at risk if we do not perform by the 17th. Yes.
Mr. Mortel, do we have that currently in writing, that if what they're stating as phase 1 of the buffer will be fully installed by December 17th, or they forfeit the entire bond?
I haven't seen the bond. You recognize the person with the money is not them.
Yeah.
The bond would be an insurance company.
Right.
So I mean, I don't know.
Yes.
I mean, you could potentially
surety
bond it by a
company, yes.
deadline. Most of the time, there's a daily penalty rather than a forfeit of the entire bond, but maybe there's language that has that. I'd have to see it.
It's in possession of the development department.
I was going to ask about the water situation and the plants, if they do go in on the phasing that you're talking. You're saying that you're still going to you want to start your construction. So you're using like just the mixer trucks and whatever for water?
Yeah, we have, our contractor will have a water truck on site that will be filled with water every day. And I think the plant, our landscape architect, our landscape company said they would be watering the plants every other day from the water truck.
Okay,
Until they get, until they get some growth.
established, okay. Commissioner Meyer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm trying to understand, Commissioner McDonald. So, in your mind, the major screening, I mean, the buttonwoods are
Right. Yeah.
the major screening of the laurel oaks and the major
All
the
that
pines.
needs to be in before vertical construction.
Right. The timeline for, the proposed timeline is, beginning by November 8th, due by promise of the work schedule and the bond to be completed by whatever that date is.
December 17th.
Well, I'm just trying to understand from your perspective, you don't want to see any,
Vertical.
yeah,
Right.
no buildings going up
Right.
until because you want to see the screening up first. It's about
Including
screening.
the model home, you're saying no model home?
Yeah, no model home, no vertical construction.
Yeah,
They can
the-
do their site work or whatever, because they're doing that now, but, because they need to do that for irrigation and
Right.
stormwater. But vertical construction needs to wait until they in my opinion, and this is where I'm going, until the buffer is replaced.
Okay.
And, and I'm not worried about the buttonwoods. That's like you said, they're small and.
Well, they're actually 10 foot tall, so they
Well,
are
okay.
substantial, but
Yeah.
they physically just can't be put in.
So is that for purposes of screening, or is that more for light a fire and make sure
I
it's
want
done?
both. I want to light a fire, and I also and the screening, both. I think I'm getting a lot of flack about this from a lot of people. A lot of people are very upset about it, and the normal course of business is not to do this. And one of the things is that in the trees, not only do they the buffer. Do they provide a screen? They also provide a barrier for dust and dirt and everything else. And I just think that it's something that needs to be done. So
The one point I would like to just make also is that the existing the buffer that was there originally that was removed, it wasn't 100% coverage. I mean, there were significant gaps in large portions of that buffer. In addition to what we're doing to mitigate from the removal of the trees, we're planting more from an original landscape plan that filled in those gaps. So even if the buffer hadn't come down, like it unfortunately did, there would be gaps in that we wouldn't have planted until January or so. So
I don't think, what I feel personally is this isn't helping anybody. This is awful what happened. And listening to you talk, Mr. McFarland, I really believe that you're sincere. And
Thank
that
you.
this is awful. I've read that this is you planned this and heard that this. I don't believe that.
No, thank you.
And I want to work this out here tonight.
May I? Okay, so I want to hold where you are, Troy, but I also want to advocate so for me, the timing is important, obviously. I want the trees in yesterday because it's always going to take longer for them to grow, so get them in yesterday. But I can go along with you on holding the line on this timing thing, but I also want to make one more case, and if it's, I'll just cut bait if you guys don't bite. They are proposing to replace and pay based on straight code for tree mitigation. I know I gobbledygooked it last time trying to explain how the numbers were wrong. But let me walk through kind of where I'm at and what I want to ask for, and I can be a little lenient on the time and what they propose. So right now, their proposal is that there's 2,550 inches of trees that some of that they're replanting. 1764, they're replanting. They need to make up the rest by paying us. Okay, so the way they got to that 2,550 inches for mitigation, both on-site planting and payment in lieu, is by multiplying it by 1.5. That's our straight code if they were going to do it on a regular site plan. What I am asking for, and I wish Steve Garrett were here because I talked to him a little bit after the last meeting. What I was asking for was, we understand, we know this is coming at extensive additional cost to you, but for me, I think I would like it to be that they are going to go above and beyond straight code in terms of the inches. So what I'm going to just throw out there is, and I want to do it with a strict methodology, so it's not just give me $20,000. If we have to put a multiplier per our code at 1.5, the inches removed, that's 2,550 inches. That's the total thing we're talking about right now. Here are two other scenarios that I just want to throw out there, and I know staff did this last time, kind of. If we ask them to put in a 1.75 multiplier, 75% more inches than was removed rather than the 50% more. That brings the total inches to 2,975. They can't fit any more trees on the site. They've already said that. So that would result in, instead of $55,125 paid to us, that would result in $84,770 paid to us. That's 75% more inches because of this catastrophic mistake. Another alternative, this is asking, this is not doubling it, but This is going to 200%. An additional 100%. You have to mitigate fully double what came out. That's 3,400 inches, which would result in, back to us, 114,520 paid into our tree fund. So at the end of the day, I understand the need for screening, and I'm there with you. I am not getting from them, like, I think they're already doing the trees as fast as possible, and I feel like, I'm not putting words in your mouth, I just feel like what I'm getting from where you are is that you want to make them plant the trees before any vertical construction. It's not going to make the trees go in faster. It's just going to, like, you know,
Slow them down.
well, it's going to hurt them. It's going to pinch them. And what I would rather do, because that's not going to get the trees in faster, I truly believe, I mean, maybe it would, but what I would rather see us do is, since the trees are going to go in at the same time, I'd rather advocate together that we need you to go above and beyond. I want you to please go above and beyond the 1.5 multiplier. Let's go to, I've got 200% or 175%. And pay in so that we can plant some more trees throughout the city. That's kind of where I'm at.
Trees. Can I ask Mr. Mortel a
Yes.
question? Mike, is that something that we can do? Because I know we can't do a penalty.
Well, for what it's worth,
I'd never said penalty.
I know, that's,
for what it's worth.
I want to make sure that.
Compliance is what the burden is on both sides. The question is, you could say right now, look, plant the buffer and start work when you're back in compliance. And if you plant a 18-foot tree, we need at least one of them to be 30 feet long so you can start vertical construction in 7.5 or 8 years from now. Obviously, that doesn't benefit anybody either. So in lieu of total compliance, you have some discretion to vary from what your expectations are, but it can't be for the sole purpose of a, criminal sanction or a punishment.
Commissioner Meyer, I definitely hear what you're saying, because for me, what we're trying to do up here is in every way possible, shape, or form, benefit the city of Stewart. And for me, that preserve land boiled down to more than just trees.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of animals, wildlife, aesthetic beauty that it's not necessarily possible to exactly replicate. I can be okay with having them move forward. I certainly agree with your calculations that in this scenario, I'd rather see it, the calculations of 2 times rather than just, the calculations that are being used. I want hard, fast assurances with the bond that it's going to be done by December 17th, not the buttonwoods and the vertical wall. But I need to know that from our staff.
It's not.
If it's
I read
not
it.
done, there's a significant financial penalty, whether that's every day, that it's
The bond guarantees, first of all, the bond guarantees work pursuant to the plan. The plan
It's right there.
needs to be adopted, well, except for you guys are changing the plan right now. The person that issued the bond didn't know what you guys are adding on to it when they adopted the bond. They probably want to see these other terms. On top of that, what it says in the bond, as a condition precedent, and I'm going to insert names, but as a condition precedent to the city's agreement, approval, and/or acceptance, the principal, Meritage, is required to deliver a good and sufficient bond to warrant and ensure the performance of the work specified on the Osprey Preserve Rpud restoration plan, and to indemnify and save harmless the city of Stewart from any and all damages and costs caused by the failure to complete the work and/or the project within the time period described. So fast forward to January 1st, and let's say it's not done. What are your measurable damages that they would have to compensate you for?
Well, it says and.
It would be the plantings per the approved plan. I would-
Right, they'd have to
Yeah.
pay for whatever you
For
didn't
whatever
come forward
plans
with.
were put in,
But
yeah.
what Commissioner Matheson is saying, he wants a liquidated damage that if it's not in on December 18th, he wants 100% of the money to be forfeited.
Oh, yeah, bonds don't do that. Bonds cover what we haven't performed in our promise. So
Right.
if we planted,
99%,
Yeah.
you'd only get the 1% as the paid, whatever wasn't
Yes.
paid. And by the way, they might choose to just do 75% and let you take it. I mean, I'm not suggesting you do that, but
But wait,
for what
but
it's
that
worth.
would only, but then that would only affect the bond. They would still be out of compliance with this.
No, once we accepted the money, we'd be done. That would satisfy the balance of the term.
So then the landscape plan on the PUD.
You can't take the bond in lieu of the damages. You then become the operator or
And
the
we are
contractor,
planting.
and you then take the money to finish the job.
And that would then further delay the trees from being planted. That's why I want.
well, you
the
could
bond.
issue a stop work order, though, at that point, if we're not in compliance
But
with
listen, I don't,
Yeah.
don't look at me, they can do whatever they want. I'm just saying the bond is not gonna give a
Yes.
liquidated damage of $500,000 on December 19th.
That is correct.
Where if we require them to finish the trees before they start vertical construction, which they very much want to do, they will get those trees in fast.
I
And-
understand that.
And for the difference for $30,000 from like 1.75, I mean, I would rather see it done fast.
I can't throw any more money to make it happen faster, unfortunately. There are several hundred trees in that buffer, and they physically just can't plant them any quicker. So, I mean, there's nothing I can possibly do to make it go faster.
But you can,
So
but
for
you-
that, I can't do it, but, I mean, I will
But you can
say
make sure it
the
gets
threat
done.
of I think a bond in place is something that ensures it gets done. And worse yet, a stop work order that is being held over us at any moment that we're not in compliance with these dates or anything is the biggest harm that you can put on us, is stopping us from doing that moving forward.
So-
And I also say that you had said $30,000 more isn't significant, but between the $500,000 of trees and $50,000
talking
in
about on
extra.
our end.
Well, I'm saying, yeah, big picture, it's a significant cost, so the dollars aren't insignificant.
What you could do is if we allowed you to start vertical construction, you could then start slowly planting the trees, and the trees could take 8 weeks or 10 weeks.
No, I'm telling you right here, they will be done by December 17th.
But there's nothing that we can enforce that they're not. If they're not done by.
Stop work, if they're
That's
not
where
done
I'm.
on the 17th,
We
stop.
could we issue a stop
Yeah.
work order
I mean, he's
per
agreeing
this
to it.
schedule?
Yeah, on December 17th, we're going to issue a stop work order if Phase 1 is not complete.
That's
And
where-
we're going to move with the bond and hire our own landscape architect
Yes.
to finish the project, and vertical construction will be
Yeah.
stopped.
You're not going to move on the bond if they're continuing to do the work. They do it faster than us going out to RFP and doing the stuff anyway.
Yeah.
The thing is, you could do the stop work order until they came back and
Which affects their vertical.
talked it
cured
more.
it.
Right, so we have a mechanism, I just want to be absolutely clear, staff, we can.
Then if we did a full stop
can
work order,
control it.
wouldn't that entail them planting as well?
No, we only did a stop work order on the vertical.
Yeah, you can stop certain things,
So that they
certain
can
activities.
comply and cure the issue quicker.
Then Commissioner Meyer, I agree with your thoughts.
Is there a
on the-
motion
the
then?
proper calculations. As long as in the motion, there's a stop work order if Phase 1 isn't done by December 17th.
Per the,
Is that okay, Mr. Mortel, to be incorporated into the resolution?
I do not represent Meritage at all, so
I know, but we're just saying the language that our staff is recommending, and we have to, we're working
Meritage
here.
agrees with it, I think anything's okay. You guys could,
Absolutely.
sky's the limit.
so I threw out two other scenarios for an alternative multiplier. And I know that Meritage representative has said that, it's not insignificant to them, but I would like to hold firm on making it above and beyond the code. And I would ask for 1.75 as the multiplier.
What was that amount again?
So the total inches at 1.75 is 2975, less your 1764 in the planting plan, results in a remaining inches to be paid of 1,211 at $175 per tree, 2.5-inch tree. That's 84,770. I think it shows that it's above standard mitigation. And I recognize that there's a lot of additional parts here with the water truck, but that is I feel like that's the way that we feel better about it.
If that's a motion, I'll second it.
Okay.
Are you including?
I'm sorry, and we're also including express direction for staff that if the
Phase one.
phase one, or that the timeline as proposed is not complied with, that a stop work order, stop vertical work order will be.
On December 7th,
I don't want to, I want it, all of that.
Yes, that is what we commit to.
Is
Each
that
of those
okay?
days.
Thanks, Commissioner Bruner. Are you agreeing?
Oh, yes,
All
I
of
said
that
I
will
would
be done by
second that,
December
if it's a
17th.
motion.
Wait a minute, let me pull this up on my computer
It's
so I can
important that
see it.
Meritage agree to your proposal before a motion goes into effect.
He did.
Okay.
Meritage, you understand the motion that has been proposed that we're asking you to do in addition to, well, to modify what has been submitted?
Yes, madam.
Can you clarify that and summarize it, or if you want Mr. Reeds to, Mr. Reeds?
So everything on phase one will be done by 12/17, or there's a stop work order, and everything on phase two will be done by 1/7, or a stop work order would go in? Is that part of the, pursuant to what the plan says?
Stop work on vertical construction, not on the
Yeah.
buffer.
On the
Correct.
vertical construction.
Vertical.
Yes.
And we'll have additional multiplier for 1.75 for trees or money.
Do we have a date on phase two?
Yes, it is January 7th.
Okay.
It's right there on the work schedule.
That's the date we're sticking with. Perfect.
And if all of that is not done by those dates, whether it's phase one or phase two, and will the vertical construction start prior? And so the landscaping company will start putting, and that includes the date of 11/8 that landscaping will start going in.
Start, yes. That is included.
And they wrote that was a conservative date for them.
Yes.
So hopefully before then. I think they anticipated we would use the stop work order.
Are we clear on our language?
Yes.
Could
we're
you
clear.
just clarify the motion for me so I make sure I
You
have it?
want Ms. Mush,
Actually, Mike, can you just clarify?
Yeah, sure. So the motion was to accept the applicant's tree restoration, not tree, the restoration plan with the revised calculations and the mitigation schedule using 1.75 as our mitigation multiplier instead of 1.5. And with express direction to staff that if the mitigation schedule as listed here as part of this is not complied with, that a stop vertical work order will be issued immediately.
Okay. Thank you.
and Ms. Bruner, you're comfortable with what the motion is, and you're
Yes, and I
continuing to
second
second
it.
the motion?
Yes.
Thank you. And Mr. McCartland, you're,
Yes, ma'am. We are okay with those terms.
In the public comment.
okay, all right. So let's have Ms. Gail Goldsby.
Good evening, Gail Goldie. It's nice to see everyone tonight. My comment is just a general comment. You know, I've been seeing a lot of destruction to wetlands and wildlife and a lot of other things, zoning breaches. And so my question to you is this. It seems to me that an awful lot of developers come in here and they have their plans and we all look at them and everything looks good and they all agree to do everything that you ask. However, something happens between the time that you approve everything and then they start their project. Errors happen. Something gets torn down that shouldn't be torn down. A wetlands gets plowed over. The turtles are displaced. So it seems to me that their thought is that it's easier to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. And what winds up happening is you impose fines on them. But these fines aren't a detriment. It's after the fact. The destruction has already taken place. The wetlands are destroyed. The animals are displaced. So I would just question and say to you, please give this a lot of thought on how we can stop this from happening, because it's always an oops. Oops, we didn't realize that that was plowed over or clear cut in that particular area. So please do that and I'll be happy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other public comments on item number 6? Is it item number 6 or 7 or 8? 8. Thank you, Ms. McBride.
Helen McBride. As I said at the last meeting, this was no accident. I mean, I remember way back when someone did the same thing over on Hutchinson Island. Somebody did it, not us. And but yeah, you guys stick to your guns. But like the woman said, they're going to laugh all the ways to the bank because they got what they wanted. They want the preserves going, and they want beautiful trees to make their place look much better. How much money are we getting for tree replacement?
$84,770.
That's not enough. You really should. To me, 5 times what they were offering, but I'd go for 3. You really know. This is because if we got that money in our tree replacement, then you can put a lot more trees in front yards and that. But the woman's right. You got to be strong. You got to let these developers know that they don't live in our city. They don't care what happens here. We want our green. And the preserve, he's saying all the trees and that. But like the woman has said, the animals are gone. We all know what preserves are. That's why we fight so hard to keep our preserves. I appreciate what you're doing, but you're not doing enough, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other comments from the public on the motion that is before us? Staff, do you have any other additional enlightenment before we vote, or any board members? Mr. Meyer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wish we could put the trees back. I'm sure you wish we could go back in time too. Maybe it would be helpful for all of us, because I've been thinking a lot about what the alternative is, like what's the nuclear option, right? Like if we just declare breach, and you know, my fear is that we kind of have to, this is privately owned land, huge mistake happened, we're trying to make it punitive. It's always going to be debatable whether it's punitive or enough, but at the end of the day, they have to replant it, and, I mean, what would happen if they just walked away?
I mean, what would happen is compliance. So if they said, we're gonna not start vertical construction, we'll wait the 3 years, 5 years, they could just replant to the minimum of what the PUD approval is and mitigate, and if you declared breach, you have to mitigate your damages because they have property rights. So you could hold them on their permit, but the terms of the PUD are still binding. If you hired somebody to paint your house, you said, I'll pay you $5,000 to paint the house, and then they finished the job and you only paid them $2,500, they don't get to go to court and say, Judge, I think they should pay me $25,000 because they didn't pay me the last $2,500. Under the contract law, which is what a PUD is, you only get the benefit of the initial contract. Now, if you suffer damages or consequential damages as a result of them, not tort damages, because you can't do that, the economic loss rule prevents it. But, for example, if somebody knocked down a bridge and you couldn't cross it or you couldn't get to work and things like that, it'd be different. But the city won't suffer any measurable damages if it took them a year to replant the trees versus 3 weeks to replant the trees. So if they were really willing to just, like if we were hitting a recession right now and they wanted to hold off on construction anyway, there wouldn't be a lot you could do from a standpoint of forcing them to go beyond the minimum in the PUD.
Well, there's a bigger problem that we have, which is we don't account properly for the value of wildlife and animals,
Right.
unfortunately.
And you could also
But-
fine them $200 a day for every day
What
they
I
were
would,
not in
what my
compliance.
question really is, though, is not, you know, whether they drag their feet on it. It's, I mean, a piece of property has a PUD that was approved. They are out of compliance technically with the PUD. If they were to just say, you know, throw their hands up in the air and say, we're just gonna, we can't handle this, it's too fun, we can't make our money back, and they sell it, or, you know, just hold it, and it just sits there bare for however long, I mean, and then resell it.
Well, you mean, you could think of it as a code enforcement. You could, just like a breach of the PUD is, if you're a breach, we're gonna have a code enforcement hearing, you have to have a reasonable fine to promote compliance, and we're gonna say it's gonna run a $500 a day fine until compliance is there. They sell it, and then new buyer comes in, and there's a $900,000 lien on it, and new buyer is saying to you, I'm the victim here, I just want to replant your buffer, do you really want 900, you know, I'll give you 30,000 and I'll plant the buffer.
Well,
That's normally what happens.
So Commissioner Meyer, I hear definitely what you're saying, and to me, none of us are happy that the situation happened, and the best case scenario right now, that we could debate the value of the tree mitigation all we want, but to move towards getting things right, the best thing is to get the buffer replanted as quickly as possible, and then we need to have the debate moving forward of how to prevent this from happening with larger penalties and larger fines that are set and predetermined if this happens in the future.
Well, that's kind of where I was going with this. I'm trying to establish what we would consider to be, but in speaking with Mr. Mortel, he, wisely did point out to the idea that this has happened in the past where our penalties were not, whatever we think our penalties are, it's a math problem. We don't have any huge tracts of land in the city right now, but, if we put a price on something right now for a penalty or whatever that the cost is, it's just a math problem. A developer could come in and say, well, the cost of, breaking the rules and being slapped is going to be cheaper in the end run than complying. I think that's always going to be a thing. But in this case, it would be different if they were removing the preserve and the preserve. If they were removing it and leaving it removed, they have to pay to replace it all. So it is going back. So it is at additional expense plus the money. Again, it just comes down to us figuring out what
We can adjust the code going forward to have that math problem look very beneficial for the city.
Right.
If they do.
So we need to come up with that policy.
Exactly.
I agree.
But
Thank you,
Mayor?
Commissioner McDonald.
Well, that's where I kind of getting in with the halting vertical construction.
Right.
That sends a message to not only this applicant, but all future applicants that we're going to hold the line. If when you do this, your project is going to come to a halt.
Remember, it is.
Yeah,
It isn't a halt.
And I appreciate, as a man who loves compromise, I appreciate your compromise. That's why I think we've got a compromise that I can live with. It's not as strong as I would like it to be, but at the end of the day, the goal is to get that buffer back in as fast as possible.
Thank you. And speaking of the buffer, under the performance surety bond for the 877, we're still talking about the same variety of trees. You mentioned adding more as a multiplier. So those would be whatever they're agreeing to restore. That's the same type of trees.
Yeah, the motion wasn't they didn't propose any real changes to the landscape plan because they said that they couldn't fit anymore, and this is just because of the increased multiplier that results in a larger contribution to the city's tree fund.
Okay.
But it's still within our code technically because it's less than half.
Right, so that's plus that. Okay. Are there any other comments, or is staff fully aware of what the commission is asking of the applicant at this time.
Fully aware, Madam Mayor, and we will include those in the final resolution.
And I think that Miss, I don't know if it was Miss Goldsby or Miss McBride who had a thing, but Mr. City Manager, if you would work diligently with our building department, I know that they had testified that they had had a meeting previously and something happened with the person who did this act, but if we work with all of our resources and all of our tools in our building department to make sure that this kind of stuff is carefully monitored at the development stages.
Will do. This is the only one that I'm aware of.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thanks. No other questions from the public? Madam Clerk?
Vice Mayor Matheson?
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
And Commissioner Meyer.
Yes.
Thank you. We have ordinance number 2475, 2021, which is item number 9 for first reading. And this ordinance is being requested to be moved to a date certain of 11/8/2021. Mr. City Attorney, could you please read this ordinance title?
This is ordinance number 2475-2021, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, to provide for the abandonment of certain public right-of-way within the city, being that portion of platted 11-foot wide alley as shown on the plat of Dyer Estates, more clearly described and depicted in Exhibit A, attached for payment of a privilege fee, providing a severability, providing an effective date, and for other purposes.
Thank you. Staff, do you have anything to say on this item?
No, Madam Mayor?
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to continue to November 8th at the regular commission meeting.
Second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to continue this item. Let us have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Matheson? Vice Mayor Matheson?
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes, and I don't know if the developer was, no, it's just us doing this. So anyway, Palmetto Cove. So we just want to say that that vote has gone through. Did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one more thing. After having to go through this, I think, I know I'm not alone. I'm sure you all are feeling the same thing when you drive through the city and we have Bridgeview that's been recently cleared. Savannah Place has now just started to be cleared. I feel, and it's not a knock on staff, but I feel anxious that, are they also, did they make a mistake? So, maybe, I think this is a discussion that we need to continue on. We need to maybe have staff present to us again that process of pre-development meeting, site meeting, what are the staff level controls for inspection during those processes?
And I've talked with
Yes.
Kev Freeman about some additional language regarding barriers to be put up prior to land clearing to prevent. It's actually what Martin County has in their code, and so we're working on that. So.
And if people know that they're going to be forgiven, then they're just going to do something and say, oops. So we want to be very clear when we approve this and when this is coming through that we're very serious about what we approve and what our environment, what we want our environment to be. So again, I've asked City Manager.
I think it's relevant to take into consideration that in some circumstances, and I'm not commenting one way or the other, but we've had developments in the past where the vast majority of the underlying species is Melaleuca, Brazilian pepper, Australian pine, and it is the intention of the developer to clear the entire property and then restore it with native vegetation pursuant to the development plan. And I think sometimes when they clear the land, people misperceive that that's actually them removing exotics too. So there's a balance there that we need to educate people that this is actually going to be an improved land without these exotics on it when it's done.
Right, but these three developments.
I mean, in this particular case, this was
have
not.
preserves that
Right.
are enshrined in the development order.
Right.
And that's why I want us to make sure that those
are being
Well, our
raised.
staff needs to perform.
So thanks.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
It's clear.
Oh, yeah, Thank you.